If you can just sort of nip outside one of the doors or whatever, if it is urgent. So if you do take a phone call in here, I promise you now people will be listening to you and not me, and we don't want that. And if there is a fire drill, fire exit is just through the doors to my straight ahead of me, where we came in. So, following on from the EU referendum, no one can really predict exactly how the market is going to behave in the years ahead, and we're aware that there is a lot of uncertainty, and with that uncertainty can come opportunities. Opportunities are different for every business. It could mean the chance to expand into new markets. It could be the right time to create a new product or a new service, or to invest in staff, or it could be reaching out to gain more clients like the ones that you already have. Barclays doesn't have all the answers, but we do know it's beneficial to discuss the factors that will influence your business decisions, and hopefully you'll leave here today with a firmer idea of what your business strategy should look like. Agenda for today, that's not the menu, I don't know why that's on there. But today's agenda is we'll have a look at the national economy, we'll have a look at the local economy here in Andover, we'll have a look at some of the areas that we think as business leaders we should be focusing on, and we'll have a quick look at how Barclays teams can help you in the present climate. So, EU referendum, which I think came as a surprise to quite a few people when we woke up on Friday morning in June last year. We put the radio on and expected probably the red bit of that to be the vast majority of it and the blue bit not to be an awful lot. It just goes to show that you can never take anything for granted in business, and there can be all sorts of surprises around the corner. So I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation at this stage. Think about the first 3 months of this year. If you feel more positive about business than you did at the turn of the year, can you put your hand up, please? Okay. And if you're feeling less positive, that's good. And if you feel about the same, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I've got a bit of a core running through the middle here. So people that feel about the same, and then for the wings, I've got people that are feeling more positive about business than they did at the turn of the year. Would anybody like to share with me why they feel more positive than they did around Christmas time? What sort of things are we seeing?
Well, I think actually the wake-up call made us think about how we could turn potential threats into opportunities, and we're doing more. And
Okay.
meeting more people.
Yeah.
Feeling more optimistic.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. That's interesting, because when we look at, there's in a couple of slides that there's an item where the Barclays has done a survey of 1,000 of our SME customers, and there's a similar sort of view that's taken across the piece. So I guess the thing that I take from that quick straw poll is that the way we're feeling here in Andover isn't an awful lot different to how the economy's feeling as a whole. So, what's the economy telling us? Very much business as usual. There was an immediate dip after the Brexit vote last year, but there were a lot of steps that the government took with putting some money into the economy, the quantitative easing and so on, that really meant that the market steadied quite quickly. But the important thing is not to stand still and to be prepared for future fluctuations in the market, which could happen. The weaker exchange rate, which we do need to be aware of, hasn't yet been felt by many, and employment rates have proved resilient. What we are maybe expecting is some of the issues with exchange rates to start feeding through towards the back end of this year, and we'll talk about that slightly in a minute. We did find in our SME customer base that the growth did slow ahead of the referendum, but after that things picked up pretty quickly again, and we didn't see much of a downturn from our customer base towards the back end of last year, and certainly nothing compared to the downturn in activity that we saw following the financial crisis. Okay, there's not too many graphs, don't worry. This slide is consumer confidence, and you can see that there's a timeline. If you look at 2009, no prizes for guessing what happened in 2009 when consumer confidence went down hugely on the net balance score. Picked up quite quickly following the sharp reduction in base rate and the quantitative easing that took place into 2010 and beyond. We can then see people start to feel quite positive from 2014 onwards, and then a net dip below the line, but only a minor fluctuation, nothing in the same sort of space as we saw in the financial crisis, and then a slight upturn again moving into this year. So again, what you're telling me around the general feeling around how confidence is and how the economy is generally playing out on the national scene as well. Another graph, in terms of the economy, we've seen that since the initial post-referendum vote, the reaction has unwound slightly. The economy's kept strong despite the initial blip following the referendum. Overall, the economy was thought to have grown by around 2% in 2016, which is slightly below the long-term rate, but was respectable in the eyes of the bank's economists, bearing in mind some of the surprises that we had during 2016. Right, this slide is the base rate. The thing I don't necessarily like about this slide is it goes back to 2015. If you were to track base rates for the 300 odd years that we've been keeping them, there would be quite a different picture, and we'd need a much bigger graph, because those of us that are old enough would remember that base rates of 5, 6, 7%, that sort of figure, were the norm. This only encapsulates a very short period of time. The line to have an eye on here is the thick blue line at the bottom. This is, for what it's worth, Barclays' latest estimate as to where base rate is going to go over a period of time. So I think this shows that some of the things that we were expecting to happen, some of the more positive things that might meant that the Bank of England had needed to put the base rate up, they're not necessarily expected to happen now. And the latest forecast is the thick blue line that you see at the bottom, around things ticking up very slowly over the medium term. That's an interesting thing to think of. If you're thinking of a situation where you may be borrowing money, you're thinking of investing, that's useful information to know if you're thinking of maybe fixing a lending rate or something like this. Flip side of it is, if you're in a business where there's a surplus of cash, don't get too excited about getting much return on your surplus balances in the next couple of years, because one goes hand in hand with the other. Consumer Prices Index. We found that consumer spending has proved resilient since the referendum, but with economic growth forecast to slow during the course of 2017, the lower value of the sterling is likely to cause inflation and put pressure on households' spending power. The flip side of that is that exporters all of a sudden are in a better space than they have been for quite a few years. And it could be that Britain may become a destination for tourists who have a higher spending power than they would have done previously. We were expecting to see costs increase for imported goods such as oil, which have an effect on household heating bills. One of the things that came up in our inboxes in the bank yesterday was just a little article around how the supply chain is starting to change. Some of you might have seen, after all the news happened yesterday, quite an interesting thing, that where Tesco's have gone to war with Heineken. I didn't realise this, but Tesco's supplies 50 odd different lines for Heineken, but they've fallen out of bed with the Heineken around what they're going to pay for what they bring into their stores. So apparently, instead of 50 odd Heineken products in Tesco's now, there's 17 or 18 Heineken products now on Tesco's shelves. It's a bit like the Marmite thing all over again that happened at the back end of last year. So this sort of thing, it's starting to find its way into the supply chain, it's starting to find its way into supermarkets, and the interesting thing will be to what extent the major retailers actually kick back and maybe pass price increases back up the supply chain, or they actually pass them on to consumers in this country. That sort of thing all needs to play out. It will start to happen now, because some of the foreign exchange positions that big retailers took, or that wholesalers took 12 months ago, are starting to run off, and the reality of where we are with the weaker pound is now starting to find its way through. Next slide is profit margins. The medium-term uncertainty of Brexit over the UK economy remains, and establishing a new trading relationship with the European Union will be the subject of lengthy and complex negotiations. We've already seen business profitability squeezed over the past year. As the potential knock-on effect on the wider economy remains unclear, we do think firms are likely to become more hesitant about undertaking new capital projects and hiring additional workers. So it's important to look for new opportunities and to be ready to adapt to the changing marketplace. A quick video from you now. This is from a chap called Henk Potts, who is Director of Global Investment Strategy at Barclays. Listen carefully, because this guy doesn't breathe and he talks. He talks very quickly. I'm going to hand over to Henk. There you go.